I've been married for almost 10 years now. My wife, Laura, is everything I once thought I needed: steady, loyal, practical. Together we built a quiet life, a small house in the suburbs, a garden out back, 2 cars in the driveway. Dinner at 6, television at 9, lights out by 11. Predictable. Safe. But comfort can sometimes feel like a cage. I never admitted it out loud, not even to myself. I told everyone I was happy. I told myself I was happy. And maybe I was, until Emma moved in next door. Emma was different. She was younger than me, late 20s maybe, newly divorced. The kind of woman who carried herself with a confidence that was both disarming and magnetic. Dark hair she often wore loose, eyes that seemed to catch the light, and a laugh that always carried just a bit too far into the night. Laura didn't like her. She said Emma was too free, that she dressed provocatively, that she wasn't neighbor material. I never argued, but inside I knew it wasn't dislike I felt when Emma waved at me over the fence. It was something else. For months, nothing happened. Just casual greetings, polite small talk. She'd water her plants while I mowed the lawn, and sometimes she'd ask if I could help carry something heavy. I always said yes, telling myself it was just neighborly courtesy. But I noticed things. The way her shirt would ride up slightly when she bent over. The way she'd lean against the doorframe when talking, as if she knew I was watching. The way her perfume lingered long after she'd walked back inside. I told myself I was imagining it. That she wasn't really looking at me the way I thought she was. That I wasn't looking at her at all. And then one evening, everything changed. It was late summer, the kind of night when the air is thick and heavy, crickets humming in the dark. Laura had gone to bed early with a headache. I couldn't sleep, so I stepped outside, sat on the back porch with a beer in hand, just staring at the shadows of the garden. That's when I heard her voice. "Can't sleep either?" I turned. Emma stood by the fence, barefoot, holding a glass of wine. The moonlight caught the curve of her shoulder, the hem of her loose dress brushing against her knees. "Yeah," I said. "Too hot inside." She smiled, tilting her head. "Mind if I join you?" Before I could answer, she slipped through the gate and crossed into my yard. My chest tightened. I glanced back toward the bedroom window where Laura slept, but all the lights were off. Emma sat down beside me on the porch steps, close enough that I could smell the faint sweetness of her perfume. For a while, we just talked. About nothing important, the weather, the neighborhood, how quiet the street was at night. Her laugh came easily, and every time she leaned closer, my pulse quickened. At one point she reached for my beer, took a sip without asking, then handed it back with a grin. Her lips left a faint mark on the rim. Something in the air shifted after that. She set her wine glass down, turned slightly toward me. Her bare knee brushed against my leg, just lightly, but enough to make my breath catch. "You know," she said softly, "I've always wondered something about you." My throat went dry. "What's that?" She held my gaze, her eyes glinting in the moonlight. "If you're as straight-laced as you look, or if there's something darker underneath." The silence that followed was electric. I felt my heartbeat in my ears, my palms slick. I should have stood up. I should have told her to go home. Instead, I whispered, "Maybe you don't want to know the answer." Her lips curved into a slow smile. "Maybe I do." The space between us disappeared. One moment we were sitting side by side, the next her mouth was on mine, warm and urgent, tasting faintly of wine. My beer bottle slipped from my hand, forgotten as her fingers slid into my hair. For a second, panic surged in me. Laura was inside, just a few steps away. If she looked out the window, if she woke and came outside. But when Emma's tongue brushed against mine, every rational thought vanished. I pulled her closer, hands sliding down her back, feeling the heat of her skin beneath the thin fabric of her dress. She let out a soft sound against my mouth, half sigh, half laugh, and it drove me wild. We broke apart only when we heard a car pass on the street. She pressed her forehead to mine, both of us breathing hard. "This is crazy," she whispered. I know, I said. But I didn't let go. Her hand traced down my chest, pausing just above my waistband. My pulse hammered. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to stop, to remember the woman asleep in our bedroom. But when Emma's lips found my neck, the fight drained out of me. I pulled her into my lap, and she straddled me without hesitation. The porch creaked under our weight. Her dress shifted, riding higher, and I caught a glimpse of bare skin that made my head spin. We kissed like two people starved, like we'd been waiting for this moment without admitting it. Her hips moved slowly against me, teasing, and I gripped her tighter, my control unraveling with every second. "Not here," I muttered, breathless. She smiled against my mouth. "Then where?" I glanced at the dark windows of my house, at the shadow of the bedroom where Laura slept. The guilt hit me like a wave, but the hunger was stronger. "My garage," I whispered. Her eyes lit up, wicked and daring. She slid off my lap, grabbed my hand, and pulled me toward the side door. We stumbled inside, the air cooler, smelling faintly of oil and dust. The only light came from a single bulb overhead, casting shadows across the cluttered space. It felt secret, forbidden. Perfect. She pressed me against the workbench, kissing me hard, her hands already tugging at my shirt. My fingers fumbled with the straps of her dress, desperate, clumsy, like I couldn't get enough of her fast enough. When the fabric slipped down her shoulders, revealing smooth skin, I nearly lost control. Her laugh was low, teasing. "So maybe you're not so straight-laced after all." I didn't answer. My mouth was too busy on her collarbone, her shoulder, tasting every inch I could reach. She gasped, her fingers gripping the edge of the bench as her dress pulled around her waist. Time dissolved. I forgot where I was, who I was supposed to be. There was only her skin, her breath, the way she whispered my name like a secret she'd been dying to tell. And in that dark, messy garage, with my wife asleep just yards away, I crossed a line I knew I could never uncross. The garage felt like another world, cut off, hidden, a place where reality couldn't touch us. Emma's breath was hot against my cheek as she pressed me back against the workbench. Her fingers tugged at my shirt until it came free, fabric brushing my skin as she slid it off my shoulders. I should have stopped. God knows I should have. Laura was asleep just a few steps away, the woman who had trusted me for years, the woman who built this life with me. But Emma's body against mine, the hunger in her eyes, it was stronger than reason. Her dress slipped lower, revealing the curve of her chest. My hands moved almost without thought, exploring the bare skin I had imagined for months. She shivered under my touch, biting her lip, and the sound that escaped her throat made my knees weak. "Tell me you want this," she whispered, her voice husky, daring. "I do," I breathed. Too quickly. Too desperately. That was all the permission she needed. She leaned in, kissing me harder this time, her hands sliding down, pulling me closer. Our movements became frantic, clumsy, the urgency of two people who had been denying themselves for too long. The garage light swung slightly with each movement, throwing shifting shadows across her bare skin. Her nails scraped my back as I lifted her onto the workbench, the clutter scattering around us. She wrapped her legs around me without hesitation, pulling me into her, her lips parting in a soft moan that drowned out every last thought of guilt. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was raw, reckless, and dangerous. Every sound she made, every arch of her body against mine, only pulled me deeper into the madness. My breath came ragged, mingling with hers, the heat between us overwhelming. At one point, she pressed her hand over my mouth, stifling my groan. "Quiet," she whispered with a teasing grin. "Don't want to wake your wife." The words hit me like a punch and a thrill all at once. The danger, the sheer insanity of what we were doing, it made everything sharper, more consuming. I don't know how long it lasted. Minutes, hours, it blurred together into a haze of heat, sweat, and whispered names. All I knew was the feeling of her body against mine, the way she clung to me as if we might disappear if we let go. And then, finally, silence. We stayed tangled together, breathing hard in the dim garage, our bodies slick with sweat. Emma's hair was damp against her forehead, her chest rising and falling against mine. God, she whispered with a laugh, that was insane. I couldn't speak. My guilt was crashing down now, sharp and heavy. I'd crossed the line, and there was no going back. Emma leaned close, brushing her lips against my ear. Don't worry, she murmured. It's our secret. Her words should have comforted me. Instead, they made my stomach twist. She slid off the bench, adjusting her dress, smoothing her hair back into place. I did the same, my hands trembling as I buttoned my shirt. Before she left, she kissed me one last time, slow and deliberate. Good night, neighbor, she whispered, slipping out into the dark. I stood alone in the garage for what felt like forever, the echo of her perfume still hanging in the air. Finally, I forced myself back into the house. The bedroom was dark, quiet. Laura was curled on her side, breathing evenly, still asleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, my clothes still smelling faintly of Emma. My heart pounded in my chest, guilt clawing at me. I lay down beside my wife, staring at the ceiling. And all I could think was, this is only the beginning. The morning after felt unreal. Laura poured me coffee, her sleepy smile warm and familiar, and I couldn't meet her eyes. Every time she leaned across the counter, brushing her hair back, I saw Emma's skin instead. Every kiss from my wife tasted like betrayal. I tried to shake it off, to convince myself that what happened in the garage was a mistake, something I would bury and never repeat. But when I glanced out the kitchen window and saw Emma watering her plants in the morning sun, barefoot in her robe, she looked up and smiled. Not the polite neighbor's smile. No, something slower, knowing. That smile ruined every ounce of resolve I had. 2 days later, it happened again. Laura was working late. The house was quiet. I stepped outside under the excuse of checking the fence. Emma was there, leaning against her porch railing, sipping a glass of wine. She tilted her head, inviting me closer without a word. Inside her living room, the air smelled of candle wax and red wine. She didn't bother with small talk. She set her glass down, pressed her body to mine, and kissed me with a hunger that made my knees buckle. This time there was no hesitation, no guilt slowing me down. My hands slid under her shirt, pulling it over her head. She gasped when I pressed her back against the couch, arching into me, nails biting my shoulders as if she'd been waiting just as desperately. The sounds she made were reckless, louder, unrestrained. I whispered for her to be quiet, terrified the walls might betray us, but she only laughed breathlessly, pulling me closer, daring me to lose control. Her robe slipped open, and I took her in completely. The soft curve of her stomach, the heat of her skin, the way her body moved with mine, it was intoxicating. My guilt drowned in the rhythm of her hips, in the way she whispered my name like it belonged to her. At one point, she pressed her lips against my ear, breathless, whispering, "Do you think she knows?" The words jolted through me like lightning. I froze for a second, torn between fear and arousal. Emma didn't stop. She kissed down my neck, her hands guiding mine across her body. "She doesn't satisfy you like this, does she?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The truth was in my silence, in the way I clung to her, desperate and shameless. We didn't stop until both of us collapsed against the cushions, sweaty, trembling, laughing quietly at the insanity of what we had just done. When I finally pulled away, the clock on the wall told me it was nearly midnight. Laura would be home soon. My heart pounded as I grabbed my shirt, fumbling with the buttons, while Emma lounged back against the couch with a lazy, satisfied smile. "You'll come back," she said softly. Not a question. A statement. And she was right. Back home, Laura slipped through the door only 15 minutes later. She kissed me goodnight, then paused. Her nose brushed my collar, and she frowned for just a second. "Smells like perfume," she murmured. My stomach dropped. I forced a laugh, shaking my head. "Probably from the office. One of the women there hugged me earlier. You know how it sticks." Laura stared at me for a moment longer than usual. Then she smiled faintly, kissed me again, and said nothing. But I saw the question in her eyes. And for the first time, I realized Emma might not be the only one playing dangerous games. The days after Laura caught that trace of perfume were a blur of nerves and desire. I told myself I'd slow down, that I'd put distance between me and Emma. But every time I saw her, every time her eyes locked with mine across the yard, all my promises dissolved. She knew what she was doing. She'd bend over just a little too far while gardening, or lean against her porch rail with that sly smile, robe falling open just enough to tease. She was baiting me, and I was too weak to resist. One evening, Laura said she was going to visit her sister. She kissed me on the cheek, her lips lingering for a moment longer than usual, her eyes searching mine. "You'll be okay on your own tonight?" she asked. Her tone was casual, but something in the way she said it made my chest tighten. "Of course," I said too quickly. She gave me a faint smile, grabbed her purse, and left. The moment the door closed, I knew I wouldn't last an hour. Emma was waiting. I didn't knock. I didn't have to. She opened her door already dressed in a silk slip that clung to her like liquid. The candles were lit, music low, 2 glasses of wine on the table. "You're late," she teased, pulling me inside by the collar. I barely had time to breathe before her lips were on mine, hot and demanding. My hands slid down her back, over the curve of her hips, tugging her closer until we stumbled against the couch. This time there was no restraint, no careful pacing. We were on each other like we'd been starved for weeks. Her slip slid off her shoulders in one motion, pooling at her feet, and I couldn't take my eyes off her, bare skin glowing in candlelight, chest rising and falling with her quickened breath. I kissed her hard, pushing her down onto the couch, my hands roaming, memorizing every inch. She arched into me, nails digging into my back, whispering my name like a plea. "Harder," she begged, her voice raw with need. And I gave her everything she asked for. Her moans filled the room, reckless and loud, until she pressed a pillow against her mouth to stifle the sounds. But even muffled, every gasp, every tremor of her body drove me further, made me forget everything but the heat of her against me. The couch creaked, the wine glasses rattled on the table, and still we moved together, sweat slick on our skin, breaths ragged. At one point, she grabbed my face in her hands, staring at me with wild eyes. "You're mine tonight," she whispered fiercely. And God help me, I wanted to believe it. When it was over, we collapsed in a tangled heap, her head resting on my chest, both of us trembling, spent. I traced lazy circles on her back, my guilt temporarily drowned by the haze of what we'd just done. But the illusion shattered the second my phone buzzed. "Laura. Asterisk on my way home. Be there in 20 asterisk." My blood turned to ice. I sat up, heart pounding. "I have to go," I muttered, scrambling for my clothes. Emma smirked, completely unbothered, watching me struggle with my buttons. "Relax. You've got time." "You don't understand," I snapped, my voice low, panicked. "She'll know. She'll smell it again." Emma laughed softly, pulling me back for one more kiss, slow and intoxicating. "Then shower. Spray some cologne. She won't know anything." But deep down, I wasn't so sure. When I slipped back into my house 15 minutes later, Laura was already inside, hanging up her coat. "Back already?" I asked, forcing a smile. "Traffic was light," she said, watching me closely. Her eyes lingered on me a little too long, as if searching for something. She stepped closer, sliding her arms around me, pressing her face into my chest. I held my breath. "You smell different," she said quietly. I froze. "New cologne," I lied instantly, kissing her forehead. She leaned back, her gaze sharp, unreadable. Then she smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Looks good on you," she said softly. But the way she held my stare told me she didn't believe a word. That night, lying in bed beside her, every time she shifted in her sleep, I wondered if she was really asleep at all. And I knew Laura wasn't blind. She was watching. Waiting.